So a key to organisational health is employee engagement, and in this week's Organisational Health article, the bit that I want to focus on and what I'd like to introduce you, and if you haven't already seen it, is Gallup every couple of years do a state of the global workplace, and the 2022 report is out, and it's really rather telling. If you look at employee engagement, and there's a whole series of metrics in terms of well-being, in terms of environment, in terms of job satisfaction, the global workforce is only 21% engaged. Now, actually, then when you break that down and have a look at the UK numbers, we're at 9%. Now, interestingly for the UK, and certainly as I've been following this over the last few years, that number is in decline. It was on a steady up pre-COVID, and then COVID's obviously come along and had an impact on this one. And I think there has been much discussion with regards to engagement and employee engagement specifically, in an organisation. The reality here, and actually before I go on, there is a link in the article to go and have a look at the Gallup report. I think you'll find it quite interesting. Generally speaking, the UK has some average figures in line with the global trends, but the overall engagement side of life, if you think 9% of your workforce are thriving in their job, they're in a place where they're fully engaged. 9%. Now that will vary from organisation to organisation, but as an average, you can probably recognise what that looks like in your own organisation. So what? Well, I think in terms of going forward, in terms of how we can engage our organisation and our people, it's recognising that we are working with more than just an employee. They're not just a worker. There's a lot more to what makes our people tick, and recognising that and having a culture that empowers that is incredibly valuable. And let's be brutally frank on this one. If we can get a high level of engagement, you're going to attract great people, you're going to retain great people, you're going to create high levels of efficiency, and at the bottom line, that's what it all impacts on. It impacts on the bottom line, and that means that everybody's going to be in a better place. The business has got a stronger and more sustainable future. It's able to invest heavily or more heavily in its people. You can encourage people to engage more, and there's more opportunity from within the business. So when we start to look at this, what does it actually mean? Well, if we start to nurture the whole person rather than just the employee, then we can start to create that culture. We can create quite open communication, lines of communication where people feel safe to be able to contribute. An interesting one I think for every level of management and every level of leadership is practicing active listening. So we're actually adopting a focus where we seek to understand first rather than just give advice, give direction, give clarity, give advice. We listen first to understand. Empathy is a really interesting one. Where we cultivate an environment of empathy, where there's a deeper sense of caring, for the workforce, for the team. You support personal development, and I think in supporting personal development is looking at what are the opportunities within the organisation. Is there a very clear career path? Could you establish one? Could you look to where actually you could encourage your team to engage in their own skill sets, which will benefit their team members, that will benefit the business, and the wider well-being of the individual themselves. And then there's this, we often hear about the work-life balance, and actually we tend to just focus on the work balance. But actually, when we start to focus on the work-life balance, you're likely to get to a point where, less of your people suffer from burnout. And if you were to have a look at your team at the moment, I wonder how many of them are on the threshold. I wonder how many are really finding it tough right now. And certainly we saw that through COVID. But again, what are some of those feelings that still linger? So if we If we start to embrace that, we can start to remove that risk of the work life, risk of burnout. We enhance mental health. Now, I wrote a previous article on this one, in terms of actually we work on our physical bodies really quite heavily in terms of wanting to be healthier, and then probably don't do quite as much on our mindset. Whereas actually, if we start to create this environment, we can start to create a healthy focus in terms of how we turn up and how we think we turn up. So having a positive impact on mental health. I mentioned earlier, the work-life balance is going to retain and attract a lot more people. Now, that work-life balance, you can turn up in multiple different ways. When you get to the bottom of the article, I'll let you have a look at some of the ideas and suggestions. But, when you actively start to pursue that, you can have a real impact in terms of, people. Here's the thing. How many people probably, on a Sunday night dread Monday morning, and Monday just marks the transition to let's get to Friday as quickly as possible? We want to shift that. We want to shift that to a point where people are looking forward to their week ahead. That's true well-being. That's going to create true engagement. That in itself will boost productivity and creativity. I mean, that kind of is almost goes without saying. And ultimately, you'll improve the overall working relationship throughout the entire organisation. So I think in this week's article, where we look at that whole person and not just the worker, there's a real opportunity for your organisation to really improve that true engagement. Now, if you'd like any advice, guidance, or have a conversation on it, this is something that we've done with a number of different organisations in terms of helping shift that level of engagement, then get in touch. Hope that's helpful. Thanks a lot.